Let's have a look at these Cockney pronunciation features that we've got now. The first one is important because it's found everywhere in England in working class speech. And this is H dropping. Take any word that has an H and just don't pronounce the H. So if you're knocking in nails, you use a hammer. You'd hit the nail with a hammer. In Cockney, you can hit the nail with an hammer. In the north of England, you could hit it with an hammer. So this is not just London, it's not geographically restricted. On the other hand, it is socially restricted. And once we get up into the middle ground, the Estuary English area, then people pronounce the H's in the standard way, because we are very, very, very sensitive to H dropping. It's a very well-known social marker. Anybody who's on their best behaviour linguistically makes a great effort to pronounce all the H's. Sometimes, of course, this goes too far. People who are insecure about their H's can make a big effort in the wrong places. And so, when it's Easter time and you have an Easter egg, they might call it a Haster egg. Oh. I can remember when I was in primary school, there was a girl there and the teacher told her off because she spoke of a hangel instead of an angel, you see, trying too hard to get the H's back. But the fact of the matter is that in popular London speech and popular speech in most parts of the country, people are not confident about H's. And so my gardener, for example, he knows about this. It's a great joke for him. He says, "Shall I cut your grass right up to the edge?" And it might be the hedge, or it might be the edge of the lawn. And we know that we can't tell which it is. And this is therefore confusable. Well, in standard English, we do make the difference between edge and hedge, and everybody teaching English in schools to native speakers teaches the children to do this. H dropping, very widespread. Londoners have special weakening. The word window, good example here, pronounced as window, where instead of an O at the end, you've got a schwa and a window. Do you remember in Dickens, there's a school called Do the Boys Hall, where the schoolmaster, Mr. Squeers, believes in practical education, and he teaches the boys to spell window by getting them to clean the windows. And Dickens spells it like this, thereby telling us that the schoolmaster himself is ignorant and is using the non-standard pronunciation window, along with the sensible spelling for that, instead of course, the standard pronunciation window, which suggests the standard spelling. So he's poking fun at the schoolmaster, the uneducated, unqualified schoolmaster in the bad school that he's describing. Londoners don't necessarily distinguish then between a pillow that you sleep on and a pillar column. Both of them can be pronounced pillar. U and to. U has a weak form which is not very weak in RP, namely you. That's what we had in thank you this morning. In London, it gets weakened further, it gets weakened to ya. This is not really standard. So, Londoners can say thank ya with a ya at the end. You will often hear people saying see ya, meaning goodbye, which in my English is see you, and that difference again between see you and see ya is full of social meaning. See you is the upper form, see ya is the lower form. So it's a matter of how much you weaken this. When we have to at the end of a sentence, I may not be able to do it, but at least I'll try to. I use two at the end there. Semi-weak, still rounded and back. Cockney will be, oh, try that, with this da at the end. TH, fronting and stopping. TH sounds. We know about the TH sounds, the dental fricatives. Difficult. Many foreign languages don't have these sounds. Well, Londoners don't like them either. And so instead of I think, people say I think. I think. So we get th becoming th. Dental becomes labiodental. We count 1, 2, 3. Not 3, but 3. 3. It does lead to confusion. I've got 3 tickets. But there we are. We have to live with it somehow. You can tell from the context, people always say, well, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. The voiced one goes to v. So instead of having a mother and a father, you've got a mother and a father. Mother, father. That's easier, isn't it? And it's spreading very rapidly in Britain at present. You noticed it, have you? No, it's not your imagination. You do hear it more and more. People keep sending breathless reports, you know, it's reached Durham. There was, in fact, it got into the papers because people have started doing it in Glasgow in Scotland, you see. And this was reported as Cockney reaching Glasgow, you know, shock horror. And they invented a special name, Jockney, for it. Jock being our word for a Scottish working man. And of course, they don't sound Londoners at all like Londoners. They sound Scottish, as they always have done. But it's just this one particular feature that does seem to have spread so fast and so rapidly. So who knows, in 100 years, perhaps nobody will need to learn to make dental fricatives, TH sounds, at all anymore. At the beginning of a word, something else can happen. If we take the phrase this and that, well, in London you can get this and that, with V, the labiodental, but you can also get other things. You can have this and that, talking about this and that, with plosives. So just in initial position, not anywhere else, you can have this and that. Now we don't say mother for mother or father for father, not in London English, you do in West Indian English and so on, which is one of the influences, but that's not become a London thing yet. You can also get nothing at all. It's now. Talk about it now. It's now. And particularly after another consonant, you get kind of assimilation. What's all this in? What's all this in? Now, all this then becomes all this then. All this then. It kind of assimilates to the preceding consonant. So these initial dentals are very weak and easily changed, which means it does have one important message for foreign learners, that although these are difficult sounds and you must learn to make them, in rapid speech, you can sometimes forget about them and lose them, leave them out. And if you say all this, it will pass unnoticed. What's all this? What's all this? What's that? What's that? We can leave out the in that kind of position. All right, back to London then. We have this fronting, moving to a further forward place of articulation, or stopping, turning into a stop for these dental fricatives. This is our next important London feature, L-vocalization. Now, we haven't yet got round to talking about L sounds in the lectures, but we have two kinds of L sound in English, clear and dark. Clear L, used before a vowel, dark L, used elsewhere. Dark L, has a kind of colouring. And what's happened in London is that the actual lateral articulation with the tongue tip is lost, leaving just the vowel colouring. So we end up with a kind of or vowel, for which I should use that symbol. And it means that in a word such as milk, received pronunciation, traditional form, milk, dark L, milk, milk, what we get instead is milk, milk, milk. Well, we don't actually have any L sound as such at all. It's a kind of new diphthong, milk, milk. Just try it saying it, milk, 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 milk. Well, millions of people pronounce this word that way by now. It affects L wherever it's before a consonant or at the end. These are the positions where L is dark. It means that in a word like cell, we have a new diphthong, cell. In a word like middle, we get middle, middle, which is much easier to say. Rather than little, we get little. Or because this interacts with glottal stops, we shall come to in a minute, we can get little. Little. And these are much easier, really, probably for most learners than the traditional middle and little. So I always feel that if somebody can easily say middle, that is better than saying middle or something with an inappropriate kind of attempt at an L. And it's, of course, becoming more and more acceptable as more and more people do it. L-vocalization. Milk, shelf, middle, tables. T-glottalling. In various parts of the word, ends of syllables particularly, T is undergoing a change so that instead of being made with the tongue tip on the alveolar ridge in the traditional way, it's made at the glottis. That's called a glottal stop. And this means instead of saying rabbit, you can say rabbit, 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 rabbit. For Japanese learners, this should be easier. This is what you do after a short vowel at the end of an utterance in Japanese. So you say te or you say hai. That's a glottal stop at the end. This is the same thing as we're doing in rabbit. Glottal stop. But in other positions as well. So there's a butterfly, 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 and a printer, and a kettle, kettle with the vocalised L, kettle, kettle, a little kettle, football, football, football. Well, traditionally football with a tongue tip T, but now increasingly football where the tongue doesn't bother to make that movement, but you still get the glottal closure making a voiceless sound. Football. You mustn't leave it out, you mustn't say football, but football is creeping into received pronunciation by now. Football. Get out. Now I say get out. In certain circumstances I can say get out, particularly if there's a consonant following. Get out now. Get out now. I can do it with a glottal stop. Get out now. Or get out there. Get out there. Before a consonant, in my casual English, I can use this glottally. Londoners, and increasingly everybody, does it now between vowels. So, first of all, get out in isolation, but then also get out. Get out. Get out. However, there is another possibility, which is this. Get out. What am I doing there? Get out. Get out. Get out. I'm doing the American style voicing of the T, making it like a quick D or an R sound almost. Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. That is another possibility. We can use that phonetic symbol for it, or we can just write it as a tatar, get out. We've got a battle going on really in London and more generally in England between these two tendencies. One is the tendency towards glottal stops, get out. The other is the tendency towards T-voicing between vowels, get out. Do we say, put it down, voicing, or do we say, put it down, glottal stops?